The gunshots cracked like thunder across the dusty plains of Arizona Territory, shattering the midday silence as Jack Harlan's horse bucked wildly beneath him. Blood soaked his shirt from the fresh wound in his side, a parting gift from the outlaw he'd just put down in a hail of lead. But as he slumped forward in the saddle, the world blurring into a haze of red sand and relentless sun, he knew this wasn't the end he'd chased for 2 long years, not yet. The ghost of his murdered wife and son whispered in his ear, urging him on, but his body betrayed him, collapsing into the dirt like a felled oak, miles from the nearest town. Jack awoke to the cool touch of a damp cloth on his fevered brow. His eyes fluttered open to a face he didn't recognize, a woman with sun-kissed olive skin, dark hair tied back in a practical braid, and eyes like polished obsidian that held both wariness and resolve. She was kneeling beside him in the shade of a rocky outcrop, her hands steady as she bandaged his wound with strips torn from her own skirt. "Easy there, stranger," she murmured in a voice laced with a faint Mexican lilt, soft yet unyielding. "You lost a lot of blood, but you'll live if you don't go thrashing around like a cornered coyote." Her name was Elena Vasquez, a widow fleeing the borderlands after her husband's death in a senseless bar fight left her vulnerable to her family's old grudges and the leering eyes of men who saw her as property. She'd crossed into the territory seeking a fresh start, but the West was no kinder to a lone Latina woman than the dusty streets of Sonora. Whispers followed her like shadows about her heritage, her supposed wild blood, the way she carried herself with a quiet defiance that unsettled the Anglo settlers. Jack, hardened by his own losses, saw none of that at first. All he saw was the stranger who'd dragged him from death's doorstep, her small campfire flickering against the encroaching night as days blurred into a slow recovery in her makeshift camp. Jack found himself talking more than he had in years. The wound in his side healed under her herbal poultice remedies, passed down from her abuela, but the deeper scars, those from the raid that stole his family, festered. They came at dawn, he confessed one evening, staring into the flames as the coyotes howled in the distance. Rustlers, led by a snake named Harlan, relation, thank God, shot my Mary through the heart while she shielded our boy. I buried Em both under that old mesquite tree back on the ranch. Been hunting those bastards ever since, but revenge, it don't fill the hole, does it? Elena listened, her own grief mirroring his. My Mateo was a good man, but the bottle turned him mean. When he died, my brothers tried to marry me off to settle some debt. I ran because I couldn't be owned again. Out here, they call me that Mex girl, like I'm less than the dust on their boots. But I've got fire in me, Jack. Same as you. Their conversations stretched long into the starlit nights, the vast desert sky a canvas for shared vulnerabilities. He taught her to handle a revolver with the precision of a seasoned gunslinger. She showed him how to mend not just flesh, but spirit, with stories of resilience from her people's ancient tales. Word spread slow in the territory, but it spread. By the time Jack could ride again, they headed toward the dusty outpost of Red Rock, where whispers of the remaining outlaws lingered. The town was a cluster of weathered saloons, a general store, and a sheriff's office that saw more card games than justice. Old Man Tucker, the grizzled barkeep who'd known Jack since his ranching days, eyed Elena with suspicion when they rode in. "Harlan, you picking up strays now? Folks round here ain't keen on ... outsiders." His words hung heavy, laced with the prejudice that simmered beneath the surface Anglos versus anyone with a hint of border blood. But Tucker had a soft spot for Jack, slipping him leads on the Outlaws while nursing a whiskey. Enter Leela, the young saloon girl with a sharp tongue and sharper wits. Orphaned young and scraping by on tips and secrets. She took a shine to Alina, seeing a kindred spirit in her quiet strength. "Don't mind the stairs, honey," Leela confided over a pot of stew in the back room. "These cowboys act tough, but half of Mister just scared of what they don't know. You and Jack, that's something real brewing there." Leela's chatter lightened the air, but she also fed them rumors. The Outlaws, now led by a cunning deputy named Slade who'd gone rogue, were plotting a big score on the stagecoach line, using the town's prejudices to mask their moves. As Jack and Alina grew closer, the push and pull of their worlds intensified. One moonless night, under a blanket of stars, he pulled her close by the campfire's dying embers. "I ain't felt this alive since." "Well, you know." But Alina, the way folks look at us sits like we're asking for trouble. She traced the scar on his cheek, her touch electric. "Let them look. Love don't care about lines on a map or colors on skin. We've both lost enough to know what's worth fighting for." Their first kiss was tentative, then fierce, a spark igniting in the arid wilderness. But doubt crept in like dawn's chill. Jack wrestled with guilt over his past family, wondering if he deserved this second chance. Alina battled the internalized shame of her heritage, fearing she'd drag him down. The tension built like a gathering storm. Slade, the outlaw deputy, had eyes everywhere. He'd heard of Jack's pursuit and saw Alina as leverage a filthy border rat to bait the trap. One afternoon, as they scouted the canyons for signs of the gang, a sniper's bullet whizzed past Elena's head, embedding in the rock beside her. "They're coming for us," Jack growled, pulling her behind cover.
Jack.
But the real ambush was subtler. Slade spread lies in town, claiming Alina was a spy for Mexican bandits, stirring up the locals into a frenzy. Tucker tried to quell it, but even he wavered. "Jack, boy, you sure about her?" Folks are talking Lynchy and Leela proved her worth then. Sneaking into the sheriff's office to steal a ledger revealing Slade's corruption, he'd been skimming from the stagecoach payroll, framing immigrants to cover his tracks. "This here's your proof," she whispered, thrusting the papers into Elena's hands.
Please.
But before they could act, Slade struck. He kidnapped Lila as bait, luring Jack and Alina to an abandoned mine shaft on the outskirts. The air inside was thick with dust and danger, lanterns flickering like malevolent eyes. The confrontation was a whirlwind of chaos. Slade's men emerged from the shadows, guns drawn. "You think you can ride in here with your mech's whore and play hero, Harlan?" Slade sneered, his face twisted in hatred. Jack's revolver barked in response, dropping one thug as Alina, drawing on her newfound skills, fired from cover, her shots precise and unyielding. But Slade grabbed Lila, pressing a knife to her throat. "Drop it, or the girl bleeds." In that heartbeat, Jack's world narrowed. Memories flooded him, Mary's lifeless eyes, his son's tiny hand gone cold. But Elena's voice cut through. "Jack, we're in this together. Remember what we fought for." He lowered his gun, feigning surrender, only to lunge as Alina distracted Slade with a thrown rock. The mine echoed with grunts and gunfire. Leela broke free, scrambling to safety. Jack grappled with Slade, the two men tumbling in the dirt until Jack's fist connected with a crack, sending the outlaw sprawling. Alina finished it, her boot pinning Slade's wrist as she disarmed him. "It's over," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Sheriff arrived late, drawn by the shots, with Tucker in tow. The ledger exposed Slade's schemes, clearing Elena's name and dismantling the web of lies. The town, shamed by their blindness, began to shift, slowly, grudgingly. Not everyone changed overnight. Prejudices ran deep as the canyons. But Lila's testimony and Tucker's gruff endorsement chipped away at the walls.
Jack.
In the aftermath, as the sun set over Red Rock in a blaze of crimson and gold, Jack and Alina stood on the porch of his reclaimed ranch. The old mesquite tree still stood sentinel over the graves, but now it felt like a guardian rather than a ghost. "I thought revenge was all I had left," Jack admitted, pulling her into his arms. "But you showed me there's more healing. Lovin, building something new." Alina smiled, her eyes shining. "And you gave me a place to belong without chains or judgments. We're stronger together, me and more." Leela visited often, bringing laughter and news from town, while Tucker grumbled his way into becoming an unlikely uncle figure, sharing stories over coffee. The West remained wild, unforgiving, but in their bond, Jack and Alina found a sanctuary. Their love, forged in fire and tempered by trials, became a beacon, not just survival, but rebirth. In a land of endless horizons, they discovered that true resilience lay not in solitary strength, but in the quiet power of two hearts beating as one. Years later, folks in Red Rock still told the tale of the gunslinger who chased ghosts and the woman who tamed his storm. It wasn't just a story of outlaws and shootouts. It was a reminder that even in the harshest dust, love could bloom, prejudices could crumble, and shattered souls could mend. And in that, they found inspiration to face their own wild frontiers.